So like I said, we're going to talk about case studies today. And I know that most of you have lots of questions about case studies. Oh, Nabel, should I have a case study? I just want to focus on visual design. I'm not really interested in telling a story. I'm not interested in talking about my design process. I'm not interested in saying anything about, my finished work. I just want to have my pretty pixels in my portfolio, and that is all. I don't have to explain to anybody how I came about those design decisions. A lot of times I get those kind of questions. Some people be like, oh, I am a motion designer, I just create things, and do I really need a case study? So a lot of people have those kind of questions. Now, let's before I start talking about what a case study is, why you need to have a case study, just imagine this in your head. Let's say you're applying to work in a startup company. You're not applying to work in Google or some big company or firm that you can't specialize. Let's say you're going to look for a job in a startup. Now, the truth of the matter is most startups are more likely to not have a lot of fun. And so they're going to need someone who is efficient in both UX and UI as well. And so if you are also applying for that job and I am also applying for that same job, and you apply with your pretty pixels, finished work, no case studies, no explanation of your process, and I apply for that same job, with my portfolio, with my case studies, guys, tell me, who are they going to invite for an interview? Take note. Your portfolio or case studies that you have is just your one-way ticket to get an interview. So I want this to be very interactive. Let's be realistic with ourselves. Most of you have had a lot of experiences with applying for jobs, and some people are not even getting interviews. Like, they'd be like, Nabel, I don't even get any response. Like, people ghost me. What is happening? What am I doing wrong? What am I not doing right? So tell me, if you are the founder of this company and candidate A and candidate B applies, and one person has just pretty pixels and another person has a complete portfolio having case studies, who would you invite as a hiring manager or recruiter for an interview? Let me know in the comments. I'm going to be looking at your comments. Let's talk about this. Okay, Marachi says she's going to pick the second candidate, which is candidate B, who is multi-facet, if I'm correct pronouncing that. Okay, Ola says, I'm going to pick the candidate with both UI and UX, wins the day. Now, the question is, why are you picking this person? I mean, you are a founder or a recruiter and you're looking for a designer, and the candidate A definitely has the skill. Like, they have the technical skill. You can actually see their pretty works and it's pretty finished. Like, it's good. Why would you want to pick somebody who has a finished work? No, think about it from your perspective as a hiring manager. Most of the time people, we designers, we talk about how we empathize with users. We talk about how we try to know what our users want. And then when it comes to your portfolio and your career and applying for jobs, you also need to think about it, like empathize with whoever, hiring managers, recruiters. Think about it. What do they actually want? What does this company actually want? And how do you stand out? Because the truth of the matter is, there is a competition. That competition is you are competing for the same job with several other people. So you're not the only person applying. Most of you can attest or agree with me that when you do, the people who are very active on LinkedIn, maybe you use LinkedIn to apply for jobs. Sometimes when you see those job posts and you look at the number of people who have actually applied, you might see like more than 200 people have actually applied for this job. Someone actually told me one day and said, Naval, when I see that, I feel discouraged and I don't put in my own application because I feel like they already got the person they're looking for. So whether you like it or not, when you apply for a job as a UX, UI designer, you're competing with several people. And so you need to stand out. And how do you stand out? That's another thing. So you have to think about this. Let me go back to the comments and see what people are saying. So Blessing says the person that documented the process will be picked. Okay, to Blessing, she's going to pick the person who documented the process. And Ayomide says the person obviously has more value to offer. What makes you think this candidate A, doesn't have much to offer? I mean, the person has the technical skill, which is the design skill. But is that the only skill? You know, there's no harm. Often tell people, and if I'm talking too fast, please let me know in the comments, because I'm a fast talker, and sometimes when I start talking, I, I don't know when to stop. So let me know when you want me to slow down. I've had people tell me, Nobel, please slow down. So what was I going to talk about anyways? Yeah, I was going to talk about the case study thing. So I've had people be like, oh my God, I lost it. I was going to say something and I lost it. Let me go back to the comments and see if I can remember what I wanted to explain. So Ayomide says the person has more value to offer. Okay. And I asked the question, how do you know that person has more things to offer? Like, how do you know this person has more value to offer? Candidate A might be even better designer than candidate B. But how do you know that? How do you show it? So having a portfolio and having case studies in your work, nonetheless, sometimes you might want to argue it, but in this competitive market that we are right now as designers, you need to stand out. And it is one way for you to show that, look, I possess the right skill. I understand this process and I know what I'm doing. And this work that is right here, I did it myself and I understand how to do it. This is your way of saying, hey, this is who I am. This is how I work. Your work goes before you to open the door before you, even though some people who are of the Christian faith will disagree with me and say, God goes before you. I understand that. But your portfolio is going to represent you first before you even go for any interview. So you cannot negotiate that. And it never hurts to have more skill. Like, it never hurts. Say, for example, personally, for those people who have been opportune to attend my previous classes and also see my resume and send my PDF portfolio where I've shown like my personal work, I went from front-end development to graphics to UI UX, and I put all my skills inside my work. So it makes me stand out, right? So that's what I wanted to tell you guys before we go on to explaining what portfolio case studies are. Let me see what Chuku Emily saying. I will pick candidate B because if you can put your thought process and designs into words, then you're really good at your job. Okay, Baliki says so true. You know what? Let's just go straight to my Figma file, and I'm just going to share my screen with you guys. So let me know when you start seeing my screen in the comments. Now, let's go on to what a UX case study is. Now, we all agree that we would pick candidate B over candidate A. And then what exactly is a case study? Is it just a work where you talk about the design thinking? A lot of people or most designers use the DISCO design thinking process, which is very popular, but that's not the only style. That's not the only approach, to design. So we have other types. We have lean UX and so many other ones. But, design thinking is much more popular. So yeah, but that doesn't mean that's the only way to document your work. So a UX case study is basically examples of your work, previous work that you've done as a designer that you put in your portfolio. Now, take note, it is previous work that you have done. And this previous work, it doesn't have to be like, it could be a personal project. It could be like a gig that you did. Let's say you had a remote gig, freelance gig, and you did a job. It could be a freelance work. It could be any kind of work, volunteer work that you put in your portfolio. What does this do for you? Well, it does give the recruiter some vital insights about you, how you tell you those compelling stories through text and images. Make sure to, underline text and images to show how you handle problem. So a case study is not for decorative purpose. The essence of having a case study is not because, oh, I want to draw a big circle and write empathize. I want to not draw another big circle and say ideate, define, prototype and test. No, it's not for decorative purpose. It's for communication. You have a case study because you want to communicate your design process. And so when you do say, oh, I empathize, or I ideate, or I define, you want to explain how you did that in text and images. And I'm hitting on this point because some people get it all wrong. They have this visually pleasing work, they have everything designed, but there's no story, there's no text, there's no copy talking about what they're actually doing. So such narrative showcase your skill and also shows the way you think, and it maximizes your chance as a potential hire. So it maximizes your chance. Now, not having a case study does not mean you don't have potential to, get hired or be interviewed for a job, but it maximizes your potential. So whether you're a visual designer, because a lot of people tell me, I'm not interested in this part, I'm not interested in this aspect. Well, it maximizes your chance. It makes you stand out, and having a work that you actually explain to someone how you come about your design solution, you talk about the reason or the why behind what you do, it actually sets you apart. This is me taking my time to really tell you what a case study is. A lot of people be like, what is a case study? So let me know in the comments, like if you actually grab something here. So I don't just want to give you a definition and then you go, a case study is previous work. But did you understand something here before I move on to the next? I'm going to go to the comments and see what you guys are saying. Okay, so what are you guys saying? Do you understand what a UX case study is? And UX means user experience. Take note, when we say user experience, everything is part of the experience. The visual aspect of it, the interactions that you do as an interaction designer, the motion that you create in that design is part of the experience. The interface that the user looks at, is part of the experience. So everything is part of the experience. And so it's user experience. And so if you say that you are a user interface designer or visual designer, you're not creating things for yourself, you're creating things for users. As such, you should at least tell us how you came about whatever things you created. Blessing says, yeah, I understand. Allah says, well explained, clearly understood, which is good. Okay, so the next question is, how do you approach case study? Now you've understood that a case study has to do with your previous work, whether it's whatever work it is. Now, how do you approach that case study? Usually, recruiters want candidates who can communicate through designs and explain themselves clearly and appealing. That is, it's not enough to have very pleasing visuals. It's also great to have some sort of, text, some sort of copywriting that is explaining things. And it doesn't have to be a very long or lengthy text. You want to make sure that you're utilizing your hierarchy. Let's say you have a heading. Let's say the heading is, okay, I'm trying to understand my users, or I did user research. And then you want to have some sort of text explaining the research that you did. I reviewed portfolios, I think a week or 2 weeks ago, I cannot remember. But recently I did have a portfolio class and I reviewed some portfolios. And a lot of people have this discovery stage or this empathize phase where they said they did research, but they don't explain or communicate anything about what they did there. So it's not enough to say, in fact, if this is personal to me, yeah, if I'm recruiting and I'm looking at your work, I don't want to see those big circle, empathize, big circle. I don't want to see that. I want to see you explain what did you do, in a very appealing way. It doesn't have to be lengthy. It could be very short, but you want to summarize what you did. Now, why scheming your UX portfolio? Nobody's going to spend an hour looking at your portfolio. No one is going to spend more than 5 minutes looking at your work. And so because they're not going to spend so much time, remember what I said before, let's say let's bring back the LinkedIn scenario where you applied for a job on LinkedIn and you're seeing over 200 people already applied before you. You're feeling discouraged where you're like, you know what, let me pull my portfolio, let me apply too. Now imagine that you are the hiring manager and you have 200 portfolios or 200 CVs or 200 case studies to look at. I mean, how many minutes would you spend on each one? And if you want to be fair to everybody and say, okay, I'm going to check everybody's work, how long can you spend? So you see, the work is not even easy on their part as recruiters as well. So you want to make it easy for them. You want to make your work schemable. Make use of your hierarchy, make use of your headings, make it big, make it clear. It's very easy to scheme. Like you have a heading, so even if they're not reading everything in details, they can actually just say, okay, this is Empathize, this person did research here, this is user persona, this is that, this is that, and that's it. So you should boost your portfolio with at least 2 to 3 case studies of your work process containing your best copywriting and captivating visuals. Now, remember the scenario. 200 people applied. How many case studies can this recruiter look at? How long? It's not about having 10 case studies in your your work or in your portfolio. But if you have 3 case studies or 2 case studies that are very good, your best work that are very good, it would help you to stand out. Because most of the time when they check 1, they check 2, that's it. They move to the next person. 1, 2, 3, they move to the next person. So you want to make your work memorable. Okay, yeah. So Maria says she understands. Rama says he or she understands. Joshua says he understands. And Afora says, yes, Nabel, I got it. That's pretty good. It's good that you're getting this part. Now the big question, how do I create this case study for my portfolio? Nabel, you've been talking about case study. It will maximize my potential. It will help me to stand out. It's going to help me to blah, 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 blah. 2 or 3 case studies. I don't even have my first work. What do I do? So the thing is, you don't build a portfolio out of the blue. It doesn't just fall from heaven. You can't. Someone asked me one day, I think most recently, and they said, can I copy someone's work and just redesign it, change the color and just claim it as my work? And I'm like, do you go to school and when you're applying for your admission into graduate school or undergrad degree or PhD, do you answer somebody's name? Do you do that? In as much as we have a community, you want to learn, you can learn from other people. You want to be authentic with your work. You want to make sure that you understand what you're doing. And that starts with going back to the foundation. You cannot create something that you don't understand. You can't do something that you don't understand properly. So go back to the foundation. You need to get fundamental design knowledge and skill. A lot of people, when they come to me and say, Nabel, I want to learn design or I want to learn UI UX, what they're actually saying underneath that statement is, I want to learn how to use Figma. That's it. It's not just about the tool. I keep saying this all the time. It's not just about the tool. You need to understand fundamental design knowledge and skill. You need to understand design principles. You need to know what design is, what good design is, how you come about good design processes, design principles. You need to understand these things before you can create a case study. And this means you need to know some design methodologies. For example, which I've said before, the design thinking is just one example. It's not the only one. It's most popular, but it's just an example of one of the processes or methodologies, for designing. So as well as key UX deliverables, you need to understand UX deliverables. I was talking to somebody, I was mentoring someone, and we're talking about whiteboarding challenge. And then the person said, whiteboarding challenge, when I go for an interview and they give me a whiteboarding challenge, do I need to do everything and create the high five? And I said, You need to know the UX deliverables that they ask you for. And the person is like, what do you mean by that? So deliverables, like, if they state that you need to create persona or usability reports, wireframes, prototypes, whatever it is, these are deliverables, by the way. You need to understand those things. I see one question already, which is from Blessing, and she says, what if I work on a project where the design thinking has been done already? That's a good question. We're coming to that. We're coming to that. You are a mind reader, Nabel. Valakis, don't flatter me yet. So what I was saying, you need to go back and get fundamental knowledge. It's not about the design tool. It's way beyond design. See, UX and UI is way beyond just utilizing Figma to create one screen. It's way beyond, creating one dashboard. It's way beyond just creating one mobile screen or one website landing page. It's beyond that. Most times I give tasks and I say just create one screen. I give my I'd call them my friends, not my students, but I give them a challenge and I say create this one screen, and I give them like 5 days. And you know what happens after that 5 days? They're not able to create anything. A lot of people be like, Lavelle, I've been so busy, I don't have the time. I understand that. But what am I saying in essence? It's beyond that one screen you're creating. It is called user experience for a reason, and it's called user interface for a reason. That is because there's people involved. You are creating for people. And if you have to create something for people, for example, you are a UI designer. Say, okay, a lot of people be like, I just want to be a UI designer. If you want to design for people, you need to understand those people. You need to be able to know what those people really want. And you really need to at least do some research. So yeah, this is you getting to understand the design fundamentals about design. Now that's one. The second thing is to work on a project. So when you do learn or have the foundational knowledge about design, you have all the foundational knowledge that I've extensively talked about, then you work on a project. There's nothing like experience. You can't beat experience. It's not enough. Don't get lost in reading books. Don't get lost in, reading about things or learning about stuff. You need to work on something. And working in a project, like I said before, it could be personal, it could be volunteered, it could be internship, it could be any kind of work, but you need to work on a project. And finally, you need to apply what you learn. Learn on the go, apply as you go. You have to apply your design knowledge and skill to a project that you choose. So Blessing says, how do you know what deliverable that is expected of you during the dashboard challenge? They're going to tell you the deliverables. If they don't tell you, you ask them, what deliverables do you expect me to create in this challenge? And take note, when you are in a whiteboarding challenge, this is just out of the blue. If you're doing a whiteboarding challenge, not a dashboard challenge, Blessing, but it's called a whiteboarding challenge. If you're doing that, it's a process where you talk about what you're thinking. So if you're designing or you're creating something, you want to think aloud and speak out and communicate with whoever is doing that interview with you. So that's how it's done. Your first question is, what if I work on a project where the design thinking has been done already? Now, you must have seen, or if you haven't, if you did work with people, let me put it this way, you must have seen case studies where, you have a case study and then you see them write the team, and then each of the team member, let's say there's a researcher, there's a, copywriter or content strategies, there's you who is the UI or, interaction designer or whatever your role might be, and there's that. Now it is plainly stated. And also when you create your case study or when you create your work, you want to mention your role. And that's something that I talk about a lot. Mention your role and mention your responsibility. Now, a lot of people might be like, I want to claim everything, like you did everything. Don't do that. It also shows that you are a team player. So state your role and state what you did. And if the research has already been done, state it right there. This is what has been researched by the team, and this is what was found, and this is where I come in, and this is what I created, and this is why I did it, and this is the decisions that I made. Talk about what you did. So it doesn't matter whether someone else has done the research. You can as well talk about how you contributed to that project and then put it in your portfolio. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next thing. Now, remember, I talked about design thinking, which I said is just an example, one of the example of design methodologies. And I want to talk about design thinking. You know, a lot of people be like, design thinking, design thinking. What is design thinking? Now, there's a lot of things reading here, which is plenty of grammar. You can read it. I mean, we can all see it. We can all read it together. It's a non-linear process, iterative process that a team uses to understand the user, assume, challenge assumptions, redefine problems, create innovations, solution to prototype and test. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. That's English. What is design thinking? You have two words, design and thinking. If you want to explain this to a layman, like a design thinking process, it's like beyond what is reading here. It's more like a language that you speak, It's your own language, your own process as a person or with your team, how you come about all the works that you create, how you come about your design solution. It is your own language. It's like a language that you speak. Okay, I speak this language and this is what I'm saying. And so this language, the way I call it, has 5 phases. So there's the first phase, which is an empathize phase, which a lot of people, like I said, big circle, empathize, big circle, define. So there are 5 phases: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. And I'm very sure, or I'm a little bit sure that a lot of you have actually seen this, or you already have it in your work. And yes, you've written like, okay, I empathize, I define, I ideate, I prototype, and test. But when you say you empathize, what did you do? And what does that mean? It is most useful to tackle problems that are ill-defined or unknown. Now, take note of some of the words that I want you to not forget. Remember, it's a language and it's a way for you to understand your users. If I'm from, let's say we're all Nigerians here, because most of my learners are from Nigeria. Let's say we're all Nigerians, and then we're speaking whatever local languages. Let's say we're speaking Yoruba, Now, if everyone is speaking the same language, you'll be able to understand, right? But if we're speaking different languages, some of us will not be able to understand. Like I'm speaking English and a lot of us, or all of us could understand. So it's a language for you to really understand your users. And take note, it is also there for you to challenge assumptions. Now, as a designer, I've seen someone who told me they know what their users want. Someone actually commented that on my post when I said, dear designer, you are not the user. And the person came under and said, I know my users. I know what my users want. Now, it's okay to have assumptions. It's okay to say, okay, I'm creating an application for a food application, and I've been living in this particular area of Lagos State, Nigeria. And I understand how difficult the transportation might be and some of the high cost of living and things like that. And it's difficult for people to cook at home, having stayed in traffic for so long, blah, blah, blah. You can have those assumptions. It's okay. But the process is there for you to challenge those assumptions. And that's the reason you go out there and then you do research to actually check, what I assume as a designer, is it the same thing? Is it what the people are actually facing? I assume that people don't cook in their homes because the cost of things is so expensive, or maybe they do not have the time, or whatever assumptions that I've written. And then when I do carry out a survey, or I do go out there and interview users, some people tell me, you know what, I don't like to cook because I don't know how to cook. Now, that's 2 different things. So you use the process to challenge assumptions. It's okay to have assumptions, but you need to challenge those assumptions. And you are not the user. Let me repeat this. Dear designer, you are not the user. So don't say, I know what my users want. Yes, sometimes your users may not know what they want, but you don't know every user. And users are of different categories. And then it's also used to redefine problems. So at the beginning of your design journey or case study that you're trying to create, you might define a particular problem and say, okay, this restaurant is not having, maybe the restaurant, remember the example I'm given. Maybe the restaurant you're trying to create an app for, and you can say the problem of the restaurant is that, they take a lot of time to deliver packages, and that's why they have low sales. But when you do carry out your research, it might say something else. It might redefine the problem. The problem might not be the delay in delivering things. It could be something else. It could be the pricing. It could be anything at all. That's by the way. And it's also a way to help you create innovative solutions to prototype. Now, the essence of having a prototype is so that you can actually test it on actual users to see if what you've created is actually serving their needs. So when you do say, I prototype and I test, then you want to explain what happened in those tests, what did you find, and how you're redefining or creating solutions that actually meet your users. This is what design thinking is. Before I start explaining what empathize, what define, what ideate, and prototype means, let me see in the comments if you got this point. Let me know in the comments, guys. Okay, there are some questions here. This is from Ola, and Ola says, are there other things responsible for getting dropped at this level aside quantity and clarity? Are you asking me, like, when you do apply for a job, do you get dropped just because of quantity and clarity? Now, no. The answer is no to that question. It's yes and no. So it could be quantity, it could be clarity, it could be some other factors as well. So anything could be a factor, and that depends on what they need. Maybe the set of skills that you've written down is not the skills they're looking for, or maybe they found someone who's more competitive. It could be anything at all. You could be dropped for any reason. And that's not just because of quantity or clarity. But of course, if you are creating your work or your case study or your portfolio, you want to make sure that it's of good quantity or quality, and it's a clear work. So yeah, Emmanuel says, I get it. Oh, for me, your one, your name is so long. I'm gonna call you for me. Especially Yoruba names. Yoruba names are so long. I'm really sorry, guys. I'm not laughing at you in a how do I put it? I'm not laughing at you. It's just funny to me. So what is a whiteboarding challenge? Well, so a whiteboarding challenge, when we talk about whiteboarding challenge, is, as the name suggests, it's a whiteboarding challenge. You are giving a case study where you are going to actually show or prove or, work with the people who are interviewing you to actually see how you create your designs, how you come about your design solution. So the essence of having a whiteboarding challenge is so that the people who want to hire you, they want to assess you and see how you work, how you think, and how you come about those design solutions. Let's say let's say this is a whiteboarding challenge right now, and the both of us, I've given you a case study and I said, we're trying to create an application for a travel agency, and the problem is that we're having low sales, and so you should find a solution to that. Now I've only given you two factors. You might start this is for some of the, let me start from the bad candidate first, or not really the bad candidate, but somebody who doesn't do well in that kind of thing. Let's say this first candidate starts off by, creating wireframes. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but this person has not actually asked questions or gotten clarity or things like that. So in that kind of scenario, they might think, okay, you're not really going to do research, you're not going to ask questions or anything. So you want to make sure that if you're in that kind of scenario, you're asking questions for clarity. You're also knowing, oh, these are deliverables that I need to create, or I need to create a persona, or blah, blah, blah. That's by the way. Let me know, Ofo, if you got the idea behind whiteboarding challenge. I'm actually going to make a video about that, or talk about it more later on. But that's by the way. Baliki says, my friends and I are currently working on a project. We're a team of 8. Can I add that to my case study? Of course, you can. Why not? I mean, it shows that you're a team player, so you can add that to your portfolio. How can we test our prototype? Well, you can test your prototype if it's a mobile. For mobile, you can use Figma Miro. If it's a website, you can use your laptop to test your prototype. So yeah, that's how you test it. Amira says, how do I know whether to use a primary or secondary research for a design process? Now, first of all, what is primary and what is secondary research? So when we talk about something that is secondary, it means that the information has already been researched and the data is already there. That's what a secondary research is about. Secondary, not even research. It's not called secondary research. It's called secondary data, not research. There are two types of research. So don't get confused, Amira. There are two types of research. We have qualitative and then we have quantitative research. That's the two types of research. But what you're asking is, when do I know whether to use a primary data or a secondary data? And what that means is, getting data from user. Secondary data is a data that's already available online. It could be researched by somebody else. Let's say you're doing a research on banks and you want to know like how many banks have blah, blah, blah feature or something like that. Someone has already done that. You taking that information from someone else's work is called secondary data. But if you go out there and then you interview people or you carry out survey by yourself, you are doing or collecting primary data. And how you know whether or not to use a primary data or secondary data is going to depend on what you're trying to know. So if you're trying to know something about quantity of anything, or there's some research that's already been done, then you want to go get a secondary data. But if it has to do with the users of your application, let's say it's an app, you want to get primary data because you don't want to go take data from what someone else has said about your app. You want to actually test it or apply it on your users. So that's what it is. And this is from Blessing. Blessing says, what questions can I ask to understand the design exercise? Your question is very vague, Blessing. It's too elaborate. Try to narrow it down. What are you trying to ask? What question can I ask to understand the design exercise? What design exercise are you trying to do? What are you trying to understand? What exactly do you want to know? Because you should be asking what you want to understand. So your question is very vague. I can't really pinpoint what you mean. I'm going to go back to the chart and see what you guys are saying. So Afora says, Nobel, your teaching is quite clear. That's good. It's good that you understand. Afora says, that's why I don't have a question yet. Valaki says, you should try mine. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Adere Mileko, but let me know. So I'm not, teaching and you guys are chit-chatting. You know how teachers back in like maybe secondary or primary school or, in the university, maybe your undergrad or master's or whatever, in your classes back in the days, when the lecturer or teacher is in front teaching, you're chit-chatting behind and saying something. So are you guys doing that in the comments? Let me know what you guys are talking about. Ola says, you're really doing great with the teaching and explanation. Kudos. Okay, so Baliki says, you were saying Yoruba names were long. Yeah, they're very long. So I'm going to go back to what we have for today. I'm going to continue sharing my screen. And yeah, let me know when you start seeing my screen. So yes, that's the golden question. Everybody asks that question when you're in a meeting or when you're, can you see my screen? Yeah, so we're going to go talk about the design thinking phases, just to give you an overview what these are. Not going in depth, but just giving an overview. So the first stage is empathize, and take note, the design thinking process is not a sequential process. You don't have to, or you must not, it's not compulsory that you start sequentially from empathize to ideate to define to prototype to test. Now, in the real world, you're likely to start from anywhere. Sometimes you can even start from testing an already made application. Now, that's in the real world. But for communication process purpose and, what's it called again? Presentation purpose, You don't want to start writing your case study and going back and forth. You start with testing, you came back to empathize, you went back to prototyping, you went back to testing again. You don't want to do that. You want to tell a story. So you want to start off from from a beginning, and then you want to have a body part, and then you want to have a conclusion and an end. You know how you tell a story, right? Once upon a time, there was a boy that did this and did that, and you have that, you want to tell a story. So that's the essence of it. Just to clarify this. So, in the real world, it's not done that way. Victor says storytelling is a special skill. Actually, I took a course. I actually learned how to tell stories. I actually took a sales course one time, and during the sales course, I learned about communication. I learned about storytelling. I learned about a lot of things, which I found were my weak points, and I needed to learn. So storytelling is a skill, and you can learn it. You can learn it. Writing is a skill. You can learn it. Research is a skill. You can learn it. So that's, by the way. Let's go back to what we're talking about, empathize. So when you say that you empathize, that means you research your user's need. So if I say that I empathize with everybody who's here, that means most of the time before I have a class or before I set a class on my Twitter or in my Telegram community, I ask them one question: what should I teach in my next class? Or sometimes I put a poll and I put different topics, based on the topics that or things that people ask me in my DM. And I put those topics and I say, okay, what should I teach this week? And I say prototyping. I could say design thinking. I could say accessibility. I could say, user research. And then people, vote on those polls. That's actually me doing some research about what people want to really learn, That's me trying to understand, my followers. Of course, not everyone who follows me is going to click on that, but a lot of people who, the audience that I've built online, most of those people are people who actually want to learn or look up to learning from me. And, they answer to those things. So it's me doing some little bit of research or taking some sort of survey. So this is me. That's also me empathizing with you guys. I'm also empathizing. And the reason I'm having this class actually right now for the second time, because I've actually taught this before, is because there was a lot of demand. People were like, is your case study class recorded? When are you having another case study class? And things like that. And so this is me actually empathizing with you guys. So here you should gain an empathetic understanding of the problem you're trying to solve. So that typically means true user research. Like I said before, I just give an example, trying to understand what you guys really want, what your problems really are. And that's true research. And I did mention before that we have two types of research. Now, empathy is crucial to a human-centered design process, such as, design thinking, because it allows you to set aside your own assumptions. So I don't need to assume and say, oh, next week I'm going to teach about accessibility. People don't even want to know what that is, even though it's important. I don't personally say, okay, next week I'm going to teach about dashboard. People don't want to know about that. It's me putting my assumptions aside and actually trying to understand what you guys really want about the world and gain real insight into user needs. I hope you guys got this point. Let me know in the comments if you did not or you want me to go over it again. Just let me know in the comments. We've got a lot to talk about. Let's see. Okay, so the next phase is define. And this is where you state your user's need and problems. Now, when you say that you state your user's need and problems, a lot of people get this stage right. Now, this is from my experience of reviewing hundreds of portfolio from my mentorship sessions, from my live classes, and, personal sessions with people. A lot of people understand the stage because the first thing they do is to draw a user persona, which is not all of it, which is not all of what define is, but a lot of people understand this phase, which is really good. So it is the time for you to accumulate the information that you gather during your empathize phase, while you research, and then you analyze your observation and you synthesize them to define core problems that you and your team have defined. So yeah, these definitions are problem statements. So you can create personas to help, keep your efforts human-centered before proceeding to ideation. Now I'm going to move to the next one. What it is, not going to go too in-depth because I know that you guys can see this. I don't need to read it for you. But the third stage is where you ideate. And this is where you challenge assumptions and create ideas. I've actually touched on this when we talked about it earlier. I talked about putting your assumptions aside and actually challenging what you've assumed before. And then you create ideas. You come up with ideas. You generate ideas, and there's several ways to do it. I'm going to move to the fourth one, which is like the part where a lot of people are so interested in. Like, I want a prototype, I want to see those things moving. I want to connect the dots. I want to design. This is where you start creating the solution. And a lot of people actually enjoy or love this stage because it's them using a design tool to actually create design. So this is where you experiment. This is where you create the solution. And finally, testing. So this is where you try out your solution and know if what you've created actually works. And that's all the stages of the design thinking phase. Now, I'm not going to go over this part of it, but finally, this is what I want to leave you with. I want to leave you with this. You can take a screenshot if you want, but case study checklist. Make sure that in your case study, you talk about the project overview, your role and responsibility, research, findings, design decisions, tests, and what you take away or what you learn from that. Let me know in the comments if you actually understood what I've been explaining for like the past 1 hour. Let me know if I'm not talking to myself right now. So, Amira says, how many case studies should I have in my portfolio? If you joined late, I talked about having at least 2 to 3 in your portfolio. Victor says, how do I overcome imposter syndrome? Victor, you're not an imposter. If you create something, celebrate your small wins. It's okay to feel like, oh, I don't know enough. I need to learn more. But you're not an imposter. An imposter is a false person. And if you have started designing, you're not an imposter. So there's so much on imposter syndrome, but I'm not going to talk much about it on this. But yeah, you're not an imposter. Tell yourself, look in the mirror and say, I'm not an imposter. I'm a designer. This case study has to be for real designs only. Like I said in the beginning, Amira, it could be personal project, it could be your volunteer project, or any kind of project at all. So you can actually get design challenges from things, website like Sharpen the Design, and create a case study out of it. So it doesn't have to be like real. But when I say it doesn't have to be like real, don't go and do a case study on Google. You did not work at Google. Don't do that. A lot of people do this a lot. Like, you create a case study on a company that you've never worked for. Everybody knows you didn't work there. Don't do that. If you're trying to get their attention, this company is actually have great designers. They, don't do that. You could do personal projects and stuff like that. So that's by the way. If you do want to do, if you're still keen on like, oh, I really love this company and I want to do a case study, make sure that you are actually solving a problem. Don't just redesign stuff for redesign's sake. Don't change the color of a particular brand and then, just because pink is your favorite color and the bank that you like is not using pink, they're using blue, you redesign their application from pink and then you change the color to blue. Redesigning something is not for decorative purpose. So make sure you're solving a problem, even if you are doing that. Now, is doing a secondary research part of Empathize? Toba, I have said this. It is secondary data. We have qualitative research and quantitative research. It is secondary data. Secondary data. Again, secondary data. Tiani says, I have a sample UI project I've been working on that didn't require a lot of work in the Empathize and Define areas since it was already given. Any tips for working backwards to develop a full case study for that? If you do go to the, if you do get to the testing phase and then you test it and then you still find some problems, you can go back. Look, it's an iterative process. And what iterative means is, you go back and forth. So you can actually go back to researching and go back to designing. So yeah, you can actually do that, Tiani. Emmanuel, Dribble is good for shorts, but if you use Pro, you can have a case study. If you don't use Pro, you only have shorts, and that's not a case study. So that's what I can tell you. Molara says, what is the best platform to document your case studies? There's several platforms, and all of them are great. It depends on how you document your work. So you can document it personally. You can use a PDF. You can use Behance. You can have a personal website. It depends on how you do it. It depends on your presentation of your work. Document your work can be on any platform. What stands you out is how you present your work. So Olu says, I try to Figma mirror my phone, but when I clicked on a frame on my laptop, it's not showing on my phone. I really don't know why that's happening. It could be for any reason, technical issues. I cannot tell Olu why you have that kind of problem. So Amira says, do I have to implement all the pain points from my usability testing? Now, that is a very good question. When you do usability testing, you actually want to know what users, find up what problems users have. And if it's something, you have to drop a scale of preference, and then you have to know, like, what should I tackle first? So this is a whole lot. This is a whole lot. So depending on your team and depending on what you want to prioritize, based on what you find in your usability testing, that's how you would implement pain points. So it's not like, oh, I find all this pain point, I implement everything. It's like you doing a scan in a hospital, and then you find headache, you find fever, you find this, you find that, you find that. You need to really pinpoint what exactly is the problem, and then you treat that problem. Okay, I'm gonna go to the live chats. So before I close this session, I am having a boot camp. Most of y'all already know I'm having a UX UI boot camp, and it's starting on the 4th of July. And this is a very immersive boot camp where I would be teaching UX design as well as UI design. And I employ all of you to actually join. So if you want to have more goodies, if you want to see this face, if you want to talk to the bell more, if you want to, laugh more and understand more. Yeah. So some of the benefits, I'm just going to share some of the things that we'll be doing. We'll be creating projects for our portfolio. You'll be having, mentorship sessions with me. You'll be having free books as well. There's some new books that I've gotten, and a whole lot of things that it's a whole complete package. So all of the sessions, of course, will be recorded so you can watch it later on. And that's by the way. So let me go back to the chat and see what you guys are saying. I think I've answered that question over and over and over again. So Blessing says, could you please share the last 2 screens? Go to my bootcamp and you will see it in my bootcamp. Tiana says, no. Okay. Ola says, you laugh a lot. Been laughing here as well. I'm a happy pill, and people who have attended my class or have actually spoken to me or have had a mentorship session with me, they say that I chuckle a lot. I'm a happy pill. I'm a happy person, and I always want to be happy and spread happiness and love. So yes, I laugh a lot. To me, one of the biggest goals in life is to be happy, to feel loved. So yeah, I should spread happiness. You don't expect me to come on here and be that strict teacher or that strict maths teacher. A lot of people don't like math, right? So back in school, you're like, this teacher is so wicked. So it's like 1 + 1. If you don't know what that is, then they beat you up. You don't expect me to be that kind of teacher, right? If I ask a question and you don't get it right, I don't have to scold you. We're adults. So I should spread laughter and fun. And that's it. So thanks. Abby says thanks, Tiana. Amira says thank you, Nabel. Amira says the session is really helpful. I'm glad that the session is helpful. And Ola says it's a complimentary statement. It's a good thing. Thank you, Ola. Thanks to everyone who's watching. I'm just gonna give like an open chance to anyone who wants me to invite them. This is the end of today's class. So if you want me to invite you, let's do that. In like a couple of minutes. If you want me to invite you, come on. I want to talk to you guys. You have questions. You have questions about, the bootcamp, or you have questions about what we've been talking about. let me know. I want to talk to you guys. It's supposed to be an interactive session, and I honestly, this idea of inviting students is not really a very, very good experience. So, because especially when I use like Google Meet, people I can see students in blogs and stuff like that. But it's all good. It's gonna be good. Rama says, thank you, Nabel. You're most welcome. Emmanuel says, thanks, Fortune. Lands a lot. Oh, this is you calling me by my first name. I prefer you to call me by my middle name, which is Nabel. That's my preferred name. Please call me Nabel. Don't call me Fortune. I'm very particular about what people call me. So, yeah, please call me Nabel. Don't call me Fortune. Thank you, Emmanuel. Abraham says, thank you so much. Love, I learned a lot. Farange, love too. Nice. Ayomide says, God bless you, ma'am. Amen. Amen. Baliki says, thank you, Nabel. You're welcome. Tiani says, thanks, Nabel. This is very informative. Definitely will join your bootcamp. Yay! Can't wait to see you. Can't wait to teach you too. Ola says, do you mind sharing how you got into design? Just briefly, I'm going to talk about that in my bootcamp. I have answered that question 1,001 times, and I'm going to say my story. So make sure you join. I see your bone straight hair vibes. It's actually my real hair. So usually Balikis, I always have like curly hair, but today I went to the salon and I did straighten my hair. I try to see the length. It's a little bit longer now. So Olua Toby says, thank you. You did a great job. Thank you so much. Okay, yes, we will be talking about writing. So thank you so much for coming, and thank you everybody for coming. This is the end of today's class. It was nice teaching you guys. Bye-bye. And yeah, there's something I want to talk about. So if you do enjoy my class, after this class, please make sure you go to my profile and put a comment there. Like, say something on the testimonial. I want to see those testimonials. So give a testimonial. Make sure you click on the follow button on my profile. Ade Bo Yega puts love too. Thanks. Ewa says thank you. See ya. You're welcome, Ewa. Maria says, here's 11:20 a.m. Oh my God, Maria, where are you? Ini says, thank you, Nabel. Ini, you're welcome. You're most welcome. Maria, where are you? You are in Venezuela. Oh my God. Wow. It's so nice to talk to you. It's so nice to have someone from Latin America in Venezuela and all the people from Africa and all over the world. Great class. Thank you. This is from Lassie, and Ebube Chuku says bye. Okay, guys, finally, this is a bye from me. See ya.